Okay, hello again, everybody. This is Chris Wells of Fairfax County's Department of Transportation. It's now 7:03. We gave a couple minutes for folks to join us, but out of respect for everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and mention that this meeting is being recorded, so it'll be available for viewing later on when it's posted. I shared this presentation tonight with Steve Welch of the Virginia Department of Transportation. Uh, we will go over why we're here and how we work together on this. First, though, I'd like to acknowledge we have some staff with us. We have Shamali Houth of Supervisor Alcorn's office, Joe Monduro of Supervisor Palchik's office, and we are expecting Supervisor Palchik, but I don't see her yet. And Supervisor Faust's office was not able to attend tonight. Are there any other elected officials or public figures in attendance that I should recognize? Okay, with that, we'll just go ahead and get started. Let me share my screen. Request control, share screen, window, paving, slideshow, start. So there's the same splash screen. I'll just go ahead and briefly introduce what we're doing tonight and why we're here. Then Steve Welch of VDOT will do his part of the presentation. Then we'll come back to me at the end. This is the paving plan and proposed striping modification meetings. And this year we're doing something different. We're combining 3 magisterial districts. So this is for Dranesville, Hunter Mill, and Providence districts. We're doing that for efficiency, but also because the way the paving has worked out this year, there's not as much paving to go around, and therefore there's not as much striping to go around. So there's actually no bike lane striping or major striping proposed in Dranesville and Providence this year. The agenda is VDOT will go over the paving process. Typically, folks are most interested in the state of their roads and what's it going to take to get their road fixed, so to speak. And then so that's VDOT's role in this. And then for my role, for Fairfax County's Department of Transportation's role, we go over the striping modifications that we do propose, and then we will do the Q&A at the end. So with that, I will stop sharing and hand it over to Steve Welch from VDOT.
Thank you, Chris. Good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Welch. I'm the Assistant Director for Transportation and Land Use for the Northern Virginia District, Fairfax County. And I'm here tonight to present this year's 2022 paving plan in Fairfax County. So give me a moment to jump on my screen here and call up my presentation. All right. First of all, can everybody see the presentation? Anyone can respond?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes. All right. I'm going to switch to laser pointer here. Okay. So this brief agenda for the evening on the paving plan. We have the statewide lane mile inventory, our district lane mile inventory. I'll go over the paving budget, how we go about constructing. A lot of questions usually are typically, one popular one is how are roads selected for paving and how are pavement conditions, rating conditions determined, and then the types of treatments in our dashboard and pavement marking and striping plan, and then turn it over to Chris. So in Northern Virginia, we have 14,142 or more lane miles, and you can see the difference in districts around the whole state. So it's quite a lot of roadway network in Northern Virginia compared to some of the others that have several counties, of course, and other parts of the state. In Northern Virginia district, which is comprised of Fairfax County, Loudoun, Prince William, and Arlington. We have, and of that, over 14,000 lane miles. Over 50% of it is in Fairfax County, where the other 25 and 22 are Loudoun and Prince William. Arlington, we only have interstates and a few primaries, so that's why there's such a low number there that we maintain. So this year, our 2022 paving budget compared to last year is $107 million. Last year, 108, you can see the numbers 104, so they're all hovering just a little over 100. Couple differences are this year, we are not putting any of the money for paving on interstates, putting roughly a quarter of it towards the primary and roughly 75% of it then on the secondary roadways. So with that, our construction season for actually doing the work, and some of you that live in a neighborhood that might have seen this already starting, is April through October, November. Depends on how the weather goes, the cold temperatures. Once the temperatures reach a certain point, the paving manufacturers have to shut down their factories because of the cold, because the pavement itself won't make it in the trucks to the site. But despite that, year-round we are working. Spring and summer, we're already right now data gathered for the next calendar year. We'll actually begin here soon working on next year's plan. And then come the summer and fall, we actually will have a plan partially put together, start working on the schedules, and into the winter, getting the contracts started being prepared. In the winter, we close out the past year's contracts. We begin setting up and advertising for bids for the upcoming year. We receive those and evaluate them, and eventually they're given notice to proceed, typically around late March, mid-March, to get ready for early April and the season when it's warmer. And that's where we're at. So how are roads selected for paving? Question we get a lot. We do that based on pavement conditions, the traffic volumes. We avoid locations that are going to have an upcoming VDOT or locality project, meaning one of the Fairfax County or one of the cities or towns. We also do our best to hold meetings with the utility companies who have utilities in our right-of-way for what they know they're going to be working on. For example, replacing a gas line or T's down a roadway. But we don't always know that. Things do change for them sometimes, but we do our best to coordinate there. The other things we do is we try to group projects for economies of scale. For example, when you ship milling equipment to one neighborhood, perhaps there's another neighborhood nearby that is also in condition rating that is ready for to be redone. We might award a contract to the same contractor in two different neighborhoods that are close by because of the mobilization cost savings. And then near the end of the year, or end of the season, if we have some money or ability left, we'll look at trying to do at least the main streets. But the other part of economies of scale is we try to get the entire neighborhood done, but if we can't, we'll at least try to get the main streets done through a neighborhood and come back. Depends on how the money works out and trying to stretch it out for the year. And also feedback from the maintenance crews. So one of the questions always asked is, how do you get the information? Do you just go out and look at it or what? No, we do look at it, but we have several contractors that have these vans that are highly equipped with a lot of various equipment itself. It measures pavement distress, roughness, the texture of the pavement, whether there's any rutting. It does do digital scanning and measurements, as well as video and imagery, and of course GPS for tracking all the roadways. You can kind of see the sort of cameras are up here and other types of equipment that are on the truck here that they use. So how often do we do this? Annually, we do the interstate roads, the primary roads, and all the high volume secondary roads. And those are roads with an average annual daily traffic of greater than 3,500 vehicles per day. We do the secondary low volume roadways. We do about 20% of those every year. So every 5 years, we're gathering the data on 100% of the secondary roadways. So we use that data and comes up with a sufficiency rating for each roadway that we've collected the data on. We have to maintain a 60 or better on our roadways. That's what our budget is, we try for, but unfortunately, of course, we still have a lot of poor and very poor roadways out there. You'll see that here shortly, but that's where we aggressively target the repaving to go to. And as I showed you in the earlier slide, we're not putting anything on the interstates this year, but on the primaries and the secondaries. And many of the secondaries are typically your neighborhood roadways. So a little blurry, but so this is our target. So on the interstate, our target this year, and these are pretty much typical of every year, we're 82%, but our sufficiency rating has come up to about 85%. One of the reasons why we're not putting any money on the interstate, because we're ahead of it, we're doing pretty good there. But on the bottom end, you can see, and I'll get to that in a second, on the high volume primaries, those greater than 3,500, we also have an 82% efficiency rate, but we're just barely at it. Primaries that are less than 3,500, we have a target of 75%. We're doing well there. But on the secondaries, greater than 3,500 and less than, we have an 82 and a 60. And you can see we were only at a 65 and 51 versus 60% accomplishment, if you will. So hence the reason why we're trying to put a little more money on the secondary roads. So how do we treat them? There's basically 3 levels of treatment. Preventative maintenance, which we do, slurry seal, latex, and patching and crack sealing in some places. In other cases, most of the cases were plant mix or milling and overlaying. Many times that's milling and overlaying just 2 inches, but there are some cases where once they mill away the first 2 inches, we find out there are problems with the bases underneath, and they'll end up milling 2 to 4 inches instead, and that also becomes a cost that we didn't expect and have to try to deal with. And in some cases, but very rare, we'll excavate and do a full depth replacement of the pavement. So this is I know this is a lot to look at. This is a high level screenshot, and I'll get back to this in a moment. But this is our pavement conditions map up through 2021 of those roadways that we're responsible for, not only in the borderline here that I'm kind of outlining of Fairfax County, but you can see out into Prince William and Loudoun as well. The red is very poor. The turquoise fuchsia is poorer. Yellow is fair, and then the good and is green, and blue is excellent. So usually the excellent is the roads that have been done in the last 1 to 5 years, typically. So this year, our paving plan in 2022, this is Fairfax County, and you can also see some of Prince William and Loudoun County here, but everything in red is scheduled work. Once it turns green, it means it's in progress, and once it turns blue on our maps, then it's completed. But I will go into this a little bit, show you how to use these. These are both interactive maps that you as general public can log on to and look at, and I'll talk about that more here briefly. So our projects are replace in kind typically. That is, the contractors mill up the roadways, they put back the striping exactly the way they were before. Occasionally we do some additional work where we add edge lines, add some crosswalks where we felt it was necessary, that was planned ahead of time, or add high visibility crosswalks. We also on occasion will lengthen a turn lane where there's room to do so, or create a turn lane if the pavement exists to do so. And then part of the reason why this is a joint meeting is that we also work with Fairfax County to seek out those opportunities where roadways can be repurposed, if you will, to become a shared lane for a bike or standard bike lane or a buffered bike lane by narrowing the existing roadway. If it's wide enough to do it, then we'll look at it, the engineering of it. We'll also look at the operations of it. Sometimes it's going from 4 lanes down to 2. Sometimes it's a 2-lane roadway that's very wide, and there is some room on the sides to put on a standard bike lane or maybe a shared lane. But that's what we work together with the county to make that happen. And we also work to identify new crosswalks and where high visibility crosswalks are to go. And another thing that we do too is in some cases where we feel it's appropriate, we do mark the lanes narrower to widen the shoulder. And sometimes what we're finding through as we go through the years and learn more about roadways is that when a road is marked a little more narrow, that people tend to feel that physical barrier of the paint lines on the roadway like that and see some improvement or slowing down, if you will, of speeds. So we do look for opportunities when we're repaving to do that. So lastly here, I'm going to go down and undo my pointer here. Oh, got to go up one. So I mentioned a little while ago that about the 2 maps, but before I go to that, I want to tell you that you can go anytime onto my.vdot.virginia.gov to complain, to tell us about a pothole, tell us about a problem with the roadway. It's a little portal website where you can go in and check off some boxes, put some information, what have you, and that's how you can reach out to us, or by calling the number 1-800-4ROAD. But one thing I was going to take a couple minutes to do is the pavement condition map. So if you go into the pavement condition map, you can click it right here. And I'm showing you how to use it. So this is the statewide pavement condition map, and you can move it around. You can zoom in, and it takes a second for it to reload, depending upon your speed in your area and how many people are using it. So if I were to go in further here, maybe just in the outside the city of Fairfax, and here's the Vienna area of interest, perhaps is 66 and Gallows Road running up through this area. You can kind of see Dunloring area, all red, very poor pavement in all those neighborhoods around that area. Whereas some areas are blue, some areas are green, yellow, what have you. And then of course, in the areas that are not even highlighted at all, like Vienna, Falls Church, those are cities and towns that maintain their own roadways. So you can go on to that and kind of look at the condition ratings in your own neighborhood and look at that map from that way. The other thing I wanted to show you was that, and I lost my screen here, 1 second, is the 2022 statewide paving status map just came out. I'm going to call that up now to show you that. And that's the one we were looking at that shows you where we're going to be doing paving in Northern Virginia. So as I move around, I can scroll back in and you can see that in that one neighborhood that I was just referring to, or area, I should say, in Dunloring, this is Gallows Road. This is 66. There's a several sections in this neighborhood that we are going to be repaving, and everywhere in red, as a matter of fact, it is a road that's going to be repaved in some way, shape, or form, whether it's typically most all of it's mill and overlay. But one other thing you can do that's interesting about it is our contractors are given a timeline, a window of anywhere from about 3 to 5 months, 6 months, and sometimes even longer to do their projects. And then they time them out how they see fit. And we do that to give them some flexibility, which also helps with the prices. So if you want to know when your road is going to be paved, your neighborhood, you can move into that roadway. You can click on the road, and up comes the project manager's name, his or her phone number, and their email address, and the company they work for. And the best success rate probably is to email that individual, and you can ask them, tell them what your address is, what road you're on, ask them when they think that their roadway is going to get paved. But always they'll come out ahead of time, 3 days to 5 days ahead of time, and put stakes along the roadway that says that paving is coming soon and need to keep cars off the roadway during certain days, park them in your driveways or around sideways other streets or what have you. So that's how to use these two different maps. And so we've been waiting for these to be put up online statewide and then hold these meetings so that we can show you how to use them as well. So you kind of get an idea here then of all the roadways that we're doing in Northern Virginia. You can see some green. We've started on those. If you click on it over here on the right, red, it means it's scheduled, green's in progress, and blue means it's completed. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Chris. So.
Okay, camera, mic, share. Okay, so hopefully you can see my slide again, and we'll talk about how we work together a little bit more and why Fairfax County is involved in VDOT's paving business. So I really describe this as a good news VDOT story. You know, VDOT has a tough job. You may not realize it. Virginia is a huge state. The westernmost tip of Virginia is west of Detroit, Michigan. And unlike most states, Virginia is responsible for the entire road system. So most states are like Maryland, where the state DOT does the primaries, the interstates, and the localities do all the rest. That's not the way it is in Virginia. So Steve and all of his co-workers at VDOT are responsible for 99.9% of Fairfax County's roads and same thing throughout the state. And so, of course, they have a tough job, right? They catch a lot of grief for potholes and for snow clearing and stuff like that. But this collaboration that we've been working on with them for 5 or 10 years is really a good news VDOT story, because VDOT they've been willing from the very beginning to basically mess up their paving process by letting us come in and make suggestions to improve the quality of life of Fairfax County citizens. And that's why Fairfax County Department of Transportation is involved. We don't own the roads, but we work for the Board of Supervisors. In this case, Supervisor Faust of Dranesville, Supervisor Palchik of Providence, and Supervisor Alcorn of Hunter Mill, and we're a value added for the community to get things that are a better quality of life. So as Steve says, this process goes on year round. We get a draft paving heads up from them in the fall. We start to look at the roads. Would they be good roads for bike lane striping, which has benefits for more than bicyclists, which I will go over, crosswalk improvements for pedestrian safety, any other engineering changes that could make the road itself safer and more logical, and then bus stop details and things like that. VDOT then does their consultant does the striping and signing plans and coordinates all the work that goes into uh, these modifications. The basic premise here is it's a blank canvas. The road's going to be paved. So like Steve said, the stripes could either go back the way they were or they could go back a different way. But when we propose them a different way, it complicates their effort. They have special contracting items that they have to ensure in place and ensure the complicated process of getting these plans done. This is a very dynamic process. It happens very quickly. We're here now in April. Well, the paving's already started. There's a neighborhood by me that's all the paving's already started. So it happens very quickly. And again, VDOT deserves a lot of credit for their willingness to improve the quality of life for folks in our community. Our role is to help lead with public engagement. So we set up the web pages, and I forgot, I should have mentioned these presentations will be available on our web pages afterwards, so you don't have to be shooting screenshots or anything. That's also sort of our role in the community as an agency where the citizens know to go to the county to find out what's going on, and so we help with that community engagement lead. VDOT also looks at the curb ramps. Are the curb ramps out of date, and do the curb ramps need to be updated? And then on the flip side of that is there a need for a capital project, a construction project of adding something like a pedestrian median? They don't have the money for that, but then that's where the county can come in and say, well, then maybe that's something we should be doing. And then we install the signage along with the paving. So it's definitely a collaborative effort, and most importantly, it's super cost efficient. The other part of my job involves building capital projects that cost millions and millions of dollars and take years. So all of this work that we're describing here takes a few tens of thousands of dollars at most per street, and happens, like I said, dynamically every summer. So for the crosswalk enhancements, we have to conduct pedestrian crossing studies to determine, is it safe from a sight distance point of view? Is it justified because there's enough pedestrians, or special needs pedestrians such as school kids? And then if we meet those warrants, then we also have to consider, well, to keep the sight distance clear for the crosswalk, do we have to eliminate some parking near the crosswalk? So we have some examples of that later on. VDOT for existing crosswalks will typically upgrade from the parallel stripe crosswalk pattern to what you see in the picture here, which is the high visibility block pattern, at significant crosswalks that serve schools, transit stations, and then activity centers. And then, like I mentioned, we also, if there's a construction project that's outside of the capability of VDOT through the summer paving process, then we identify crosswalk enhancements, crosswalk projects for the future, and we can set up the striping for that. For instance, we can stripe out a median refuge area as the road's paved, and then come back along and actually build a concrete refuge. So why do we do this? Well, as you may know, in America and in Fairfax County, roads for 100 years or at least 50 years have been built for the automobile and not much else, which means our roads have typically in America and in our county been wide and fast, and unfortunately that's not safe for residential neighborhoods and in a lot of ways in general. So there's been a whole change of mindset in the engineering profession about the dominance of the automobile and how we need to serve the vulnerable road users, such as pedestrians and bicyclists. And so we look at a wide road and we say, okay, there's more lanes that are needed, or the lanes are wider than needed. When roads are wide, as a driver, you don't have anything causing you any interference, so you just tend to go faster. This process allows us to right-size those lanes and roads, and it really improves safety for all users, including the automobiles, because then the automobiles don't crash at high speeds. We typically also almost always maintain the traffic capacity at signals. There's only been one road diet project of the hundreds that we've done where we actually reduce the capacity at the signals, because we know that the signals are the choke points in the network. And so even though the road can go from a 4-lane to a 2-lane for most of it, when it comes to the signal, we typically leave that 4-lane capacity at a signal. And then the other thing we typically leave alone is on-street parking. On-street parking is jokingly referred to as the third rail of bicycle lanes. On-street parking is very important for a variety of reasons: overflow parking for people's houses, equity issues in private areas where tradesmen or even policemen are not allowed to park their work vehicles on condominium properties, and so the parking is actually very important and not to be made light of. And so because of that reason, we absolutely typically leave all the legal on-street parking in place, except for, like I said, where we have sight distance at crosswalks. And then the real impetus for this 10 years ago, and why we're still at it, is it also helps build out the bicycle network. One way to reduce cars is, of course, to provide options, and our whole economic development posture in the county right now is to build transit-oriented density and make areas accessible by more than just the automobile, making it safer to get around on foot and on bike. So here's an example of a before and after. This is Annandale Road. We did probably six years ago or so. The road was wide open, the lanes were wide open, there was excessive speeding. That's on the left. The picture on the right, you see, we've narrowed the lanes to a standard lane width. We've provided the bike lanes. We've boxed out the parallel parking and made the parallel parking more defined. We actually dash out the bike lanes with what we call puppy tracks to indicate that you're supposed to merge through there to make a right turn. And then coming out of the side street on the left, we paint a little radius and a hatched out area to help guide people into the road. And what we found in doing this is excessive speeding is virtually eliminated. So we've done some speed studies. The 85th percentile, or the average speed, is only changed it's improved, but it's only improved typically by like 1 or 2 miles an hour. But what we found is the excessive speeders, the speeders that are going 15, 20 miles an hour over the limit, they're excessively basically eliminated. You're following single file. The same situation applies when a 4-lane road goes down to a 2-lane road. You're following single file. You typically you have this narrowing effect that just these simple striping changes do, and it really does lead to improved quality of life. I have one more slide that could speak a little bit more to that. But first, if you're not familiar with bicycle facilities, there's basically three types of things that you can see us do as part of this paving. Again, if we had millions and millions of dollars and could, build miles and miles of shared use paths, shared use paths is the highest, the highest quality bicycle facility that make people comfortable. But we don't have millions of dollars to do that. It's not context sensitive. It doesn't fit in every place. People don't want to lose their front yards. So in this paving process, it really is sort of a way to develop these interim acceptable facilities for many, if not most, users. So the three main types of treatments we have is I'll start from the best on the right is the buffered bike lane. That's when we have a little bit of extra space that we can create a painted out buffer that moves the cars away from the cyclists. In the middle there's the standard bike lane, which you've seen throughout the county's road projects now for 20 or more years, and that's a 5-foot lane for the bicycles. And then on the left, the shared lane marking, or SHARO, indicates that there's not room for a bike lane, that a bicyclist is allowed to take the lane, that we'll place the sharrow in the middle if we actually think it's too narrow for the cyclist to be towards the right. If it's wider, then we can actually place the sharrow to the right. And then one other thing that little subnote adds there, the General Assembly changed the law a few years ago to sort of, put into law what was common sense. You are allowed to cross the double yellow to go around a bicyclist as long as it's safe to do so. And certainly in the rural parts of our county, you've always not had a choice but to do anything but that. So I mentioned the comfort of cyclists. So this pie chart here shows the type of bicycle riders that are in the county in the United States. 1% is the strong and the fearless. They ride in traffic, they're comfortable, and they don't particularly need any or want any type of bicycle facility. They feel better asserting their right to ride with traffic. 9% are enthusiastic and confident. They also typically feel comfortable on road, but maybe not quite as bold as the strong and fearless. And those are the primary users of today's bike lanes. Most of our roads that had the original bike lanes that were built, like Dranesville Road, Beulah Street, Telegraph Road. Those roads are 45 miles an hour, 4-lane divided roadways, have lots of traffic, and you have to be a pretty confident cyclist to be biking in those bike lanes. Why are we moving away from that, and why are we trying to build these more comfortable facilities and build more shared use paths, and even a higher level facility called a cycle track, which is a parallel shared use path and a sidewalk? That's because the majority of the population, 56%, are interested in cycling, but they're concerned, and they want to be safe. They're not going to bike to our local schools, churches, community centers, transit, if they're not safe. And so that's really an important change in America and change in the county, because since the 1970s, we've really only been serving that smaller percentage group, 10% of the public. So people always ask, well, why are you doing bike lanes? I never see anyone doing it. Well, that's because only 10% of the public felt safe doing it. And so we're shifting to a more safe and comfortable facility. And then last but not least, there's a large part of the population that we call the no way, no how. There's nothing we could do for them to get them on a bicycle, probably not even, charging $50 a day for parking or anything. So what are the other benefits of what we're talking about here, these road repurposing? Well, of course, in the top left, bike lanes certainly increase the comfort and safety of cycling. But in the middle top, you see the pedestrian exposure to traffic is narrowed. So if the cars have been pushed to the center of the road and you have bike lanes on the outside, then your exposure risk, as we call it, to the vehicles is only in that narrower part. And so your exposure risk has been reduced by these narrowing. On the top right, these bike lanes add a buffer between people on the sidewalk or even in your front yard and traffic. So again, the traffic has been moved to the center of the road, and that the noise and the risk and the pollution and everything is moved, a little bit away from you. I mentioned noise, so on the bottom left, as speeds are reduced, then noise levels are also reduced. So that's again a quality of life thing. We've learned as we've done these over the years. Most communities are not bicyclists, and they don't. Again, they ask, why are you doing this for bicyclists? But once we explain that we're doing them for the quality of life in the community to reduce speeding and to have these other benefits, there's a greater support and acceptance of why we're doing this. And then last, but super important, is the bottom right. Bike lanes actually improve your visibility to pull out of your driveway. In engineering, we do a sight distance triangle, and that's from where you are past the obstruction to what you can see. Well, when vehicles are moved to the center of the road, your sight distance is improved from those parked vehicles on the side of the road. So that's that. So why are we here tonight? In Providence district, we actually do have two roads that Steve showed on his map earlier that are good candidates for these restripings. We have Cottage Street and we have Wolf Trap Road. Wolf Trap Road is actually, it dead ends off of Gallows. We actually built a pedestrian route through that dead end at the end to the other half of Wolf Trap Road about 10 years ago. But along the area along the school there at Gallows, it's overbuilt. It was probably built as what would be a 4-lane undivided or super wide 2-lane with parallel parking. So we have wide travel lanes, on-street parkings in some areas. We have a sidewalk on both sides, and as I said, we built that trail connection through Briarcliff Park. So that's what it looks like today. With the proposed striping, we would add the bike lanes, stripe in the parallel parking areas, and this is a screenshot of Ridge Heights Road in Reston, coincidentally also with a school bus parked there. And so that would be an idea of what it would look like in the after conditions. And again, the legal on-street parking would remain as part of this proposal. Cottage Street, different dynamic. Dunloing Woods, I think is the name of that neighborhood, between Gallows and Cedar Lane. It also has 2 wide travel lanes. It has existing parallel parking on both sides, but they're actually wider than the cars, so there's excessive width in that. Sidewalk on both sides, and no bike facilities. So the proposal for Cottage Street would be to add the bike lanes where possible by narrowing both the travel and the parking lanes. You'd be left with what you're seeing there, which is looks like it's Brayburn in Annandale, where you have the 2 11-foot travel lanes, the bike lanes, and the parallel parking. And again, we would maintain all of the legal parallel parking. If there's illegal parking, like fire hydrants or bus stops, actually they do get cleaned up. The other aspect of what we do in this process, and we haven't always had the capacity to do this, either staff or timeliness, but we've upped our game these past few years. We're proactively looking for crosswalks as part of our work. So years ago, we would come to this meeting and we'd ask the community for crosswalk suggestions, and then we would struggle and be in a super rush to try and do counts and justify it, and that really wasn't workable. So we've upped, not that we don't want your suggestions, we'll still take your suggestions, but we now proactively look at the roads that are being paved, and then, as I said, go out and do these the crosswalk warrant analysis as required by VDOT. So I've got a few crosswalks that a couple of which are in those previous roads, but a couple are not. So this is Madrillon Road in South Tysons, if you want to call it that, south of the DMV and the school there off of Courthouse Road. At Boss Street, as I said, it's right by Freedom Hill Elementary School. We counted 32 pedestrians in an hour. But to install this crosswalk, those areas you see in yellow are going to have no parking restrictions to make sure that it's a safe crosswalk, to make sure that drivers can see the pedestrians and pedestrians can see drivers. And so, full transparency, we bring this to the public. We put sandwich boards at these locations so that folks have an understanding that this is the only scenario where we look at taking any parking away, but we are also only doing that in areas where it's justified by an important crosswalk, in this case by an elementary school. Also on Madrillon Road, we have Mary Oaks Lane. This is between Freedom Hill Elementary and Kilmer Middle. We counted 74 pedestrians in an hour. That's a huge number of pedestrians for what seems like a simple crosswalk. Again, seems like a very important crosswalk. And again, there'd be about 100 feet on opposite sides there in each direction of parking restrictions needed so that you can see that crosswalk. On Stonewall Drive at Shenandoah Street, which is a traditional single-family neighborhood, we have a path, a walkway that's a direct access to Thoreau Middle School. We counted 17 people crossing in an hour using that crosswalk. And so that would also require, again, some parking restrictions right adjacent to the crosswalk, 100 feet, 85 feet on the west side, and 75 feet mainly on the opposite side on the east side. Then back to Wolf Trap Road at Wolf Trap Court, which is actually one of the Kilmer Middle School entrances. We counted 18 pedestrians there. And we would have to restrict parking on the approach to that crosswalk on the west side there for about 100 feet. Another crosswalk that came up as important is Chain Bridge Road at Hibbard Street. We've had several requests from the public for this crosswalk because of the high traffic volumes on Hibbard Street. Since that's on a side street, there's no parking restrictions needed. So I hope I didn't go too fast, but we had a lot of information, and in interest of time, we're a little under an hour, and we want to give you all the time you need for Q&A. So, excuse me. Paving related comments are to be addressed to VDOT. You, again, as Steve said, you can use the myVDOT.virginia.gov or 1-800-4ROAD portal. However, we should note that all the paving decisions for 2022 have already been made. So those contracts are finished, and any input about paving that you give Steve and VDOT tonight will be considered for next paving year. And then for the striping related comments, you can submit those to us. We ask that you do those in a timely manner, so we have a date of May 2nd. Once this is posted, you can click on that link. But another way to reach us is either through our email, which is dotinfo@fairfaxcounty.gov, or when you go to our website, you can actually find, again, these meetings, and there's a way to click into that and do your comments. Or you can write us a traditional letter at the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, Active Transportation Program, 4050 Legato Road, Fairfax, Virginia 22033. So with that, this is also our first, we've transitioned our public meetings to Microsoft Teams instead of WebEx. So it's a little different format. My staff colleague David Loss is actually helping run this presentation tonight. So from within Teams, you can simply just use that little hand feature to raise your hand under reaction. And if you're calling in via the telephone, you press 5 to raise your hand, and then press *6 to unmute yourself. And hopefully between that and David, we can get everybody accommodated. So I'm going to move out of shared screen so that I can see once again.
And Chris, this is David. Just to note, it's *5 to raise your hand, not just plain old 5. I believe, if you're on the phone.
Thank you. Okay. So with that, we are, I guess, ready to take questions for Steve or me. David, if you could moderate that to your best ability. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So we have our first hand, Mark Malcolm. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's more for Chris on that for the Hunter Mill Transportation Advisory Committee, which I believe both of y'all participate on Wednesday. More, Chris, are you discussing? You mentioned the cycle track is an additional option besides what are in the roads. Are you discussing Sunrise Valley between Reston Parkway and Fairfax County Parkway, or are you also discussing with the HM Tech meeting between Innovation Station back to Fairfax County Parkway on Wednesday, the 20th meeting?
On Wednesday at the Hunter Mill TAC meeting, we'll be discussing the Sunrise Valley project and the entire limits go from almost Reston Parkway to Innovation Station, and with fingers crossed, it'll be one continuous project. So I'll be prepared to speak to all of it.
I very much appreciate it because there's 2 cycle tracks on the Reston Parkway to Fairfax County Parkway. The single cycle track, as I understand it, for the Innovation Station back to Fairfax County Parkway by the 2 project descriptions. Greatly appreciate that. There's a second thing.
They were originally listed as separate projects, but essentially it's one project.
Understood. I also have one question back to Steve. There's the thing on Sunrise Valley Drive, the curve. I had made a request in January for information. Northern Virginia District has never responded, even with 4 requests through Richmond, to the request for information that I had regarding with the guardrail that was near Hitchcock Drive that had been taken away after being damaged more than once by accidents.
It rings a bell. I know that it's been discussed at some point internally, but
understand. I'll try to
look into
participate with Wednesday if you could research it.
Yeah, I can, and we can do so separately offline. We can try to find a way to hook up with that.
I greatly appreciate all that y'all do for transportation. With the paving program, very much aware that Polo Fields is getting started, and like the machines are on a street called Hitchcock, and a whole bunch of others have signage up. Not my street, not the streets nearby mine. They're later in the project. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Great. All right. Thanks, Mark. Our next hand is Greg L. So go ahead.
Hello. Thank you. Yes, I put my questions in the chat. I'm happy to read them off, or if it's easier just to address them that way, let me know.
Yeah, I'm reading through it now, Greg.
Thank you.
Steve Welch. So you got notice this Monday morning of paving work on the street, which starts as soon as Wednesday. Our wedding rescheduled 3 times to COVID is the Sunday in the backyard. Deliveries have been stressful. Okay. And I guess you've reached out to the project manager, but they have not contacted you back.
Correct.
Correct? Which street is that?
Noble Victory Lane.
Noble Victory Lane. Okay. And I won't bother you with the other information about it. I can look that up and try to give a call to the contractor directly, or to the project manager.
Great, thank you.
Typically in a neighborhood, if there's several streets, I don't know that particular street, that particular neighborhood. Usually there's a way to try to work something out like that to work around it. So
yeah, we understand the constraints.
Yeah, they're gonna be, I mean, what they'll do, so if this neighborhood consists of, say, 8 or 10 or 12 streets, they're going to be milling all through the neighborhood everywhere first, then moving the milling equipment out of the neighborhood, and then coming back into pave. So there'll be this period of time that they could shift things around or work on other streets perhaps for a couple days. But I'll try to get in touch with him and ask him to reach back out to you. So
great, thank you so much.
Sure,
appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also Polo Fields, but
oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah. So there are a number of other streets that are scheduled as well. So.
Yes, I am. Yeah. Okay. All right. And
thank you again.
You keep trying. I'll do the same. So we'll work it out. Thank you.
Thanks.
For Greg's comment, Mark Malcolm, if I'm still available to speak, I know that 5 streets are currently signed. May not have gotten to Noble Victory yet. Definitely not to the western end of Polo Fields, but the contract was originally had a completion date of June 24th. So it'll be in short time, Greg. Thanks.
Did you have an additional comment, Mark, or is that your hand? Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? I'll check the chat again. Okay, we got a couple in the chat now. And apologies for my dog barking in the background. Sorry. So the first question from Carrie. I live at Colonies of Madrilon, which lies between Madrilon Road and George Washington Drive. We're the only neighborhood that has a pedestrian throughway. There's a concrete barrier which prevents cars from going through. So the question is, has a crosswalk been considered in that area around Freedom Hill Elementary? And apologies for my dog.
Well, as I said in the presentation, there's actually 2 crosswalks in the Freedom Hill area, but they're at streets. I took my presentation down. Hold on. Here it is. So Madrillen at Mary Oaks and Madrillen at Boss Street. So I'm not familiar with your cut-through pedestrian route. So I don't know if either one of those will help or not. If you could put that in the chat, if Boss Street or Mary Oaks would work, or if there's another location that we should be aware of.
So another crosswalk question in the chat. What is the methodology for doing the pedestrian crossing counts? So over what period of time are you doing the observations, and what times of the day, and also what times of year and other things that are considered?
Sure, thank you. That's a great question. Those counts that I reference is 1 hour's worth of pedestrian volume. So the VDOT requirement is really just that there is 1 hour that meets the thresholds that are required. So it varies, of course. It depends on what the neighborhood's generator is. If it's a school or a park or a swimming pool, we could do these year round, at any time of year, at any time of day, at any day of the week. The one caveat to that is if it's a crossing guard location, we don't take counts during the crossing guard, because the crossing guard is obviously already a higher level of safety but that's a crossing guards for an existing crosswalk. So I hope that answers the question. The requirement is just a significant volume of pedestrians for 1 hour for an unmarked, for an unsignalized crosswalk. For a pedestrian signal, it becomes significantly higher.
And Chris, just to add to that, is it 20 pedestrians in that 1 hour?
It is 20 pedestrians in that 1 hour. And so VDOT will actually take less than 20 under consideration if it's school children or the elderly or folks with disabilities, some special needs situation. But yes, the standard threshold is 20 pedestrians in an hour.
Great. So going back to the chat, looks like Carrie's followed up on the sort of crosswalk request on George Washington Drive. There's a field and a park. Children can go through a gated fence. So I don't know if Chris, if that helps you want to follow up, or we'll just keep that in mind for later.
Sure, thank you. We'll take a look at that. I don't think George Washington's being paved, but thank you. That's the kind of that's the type of community knowledge that we don't know at a countywide level, and so thank you. We'll take a look at that and see what we can do.
Okay, so our next hand, 266. You're up. Are you still there? Someone who's No name is just identified with the number 266696687. That's you. You have the floor. All right. I guess we'll skip you for now. Give you another shot later. Hopefully, maybe you got a connection issue, or ooh, is it my connection issue? Can people still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good, because everything just froze for a second.
And again, maybe they need to hit *6, but we can always come back to them.
Okay, so next up, Carrie has their hand raised. So Carrie Months. And make sure you should be able to unmute yourself. Carrie, yep.
But they had also asked in the chat, so
Right. Sure. Yeah, I just didn't know if Carrie had wanted to follow up further. If not, no worries. Okay, so our next hand, Mike Olson.
You can figure out how to unmute. That's good. I have a quick question about, we were actually part of the repaving and bike striping program last year in the Reflection Homes Association. But I was wondering if there's a warranty on the paving. There's a section of the new pavement that is deteriorated dramatically. I emailed the project manager, Gagum, who was very, very responsive during the paving. I can't say enough of how he has helped us. And he, I guess, is working in a different section of VDOT for this paving season, and forwarded the email to, I believe, Mike Lee. But I just wondered if there's something, if you might want to take a look at it as well. It's on Springer Drive and Chambly. I sent a photo, so there's a photo around as well.
Mike, this is Steve Welch from VDOT. You say the roadway in question is Springer Drive?
Correct.
Okay. I've written it down. I'll chase it down with our construction and maintenance folks and find out what's going on, have them to go out and take a look at it.
Okay, yeah. I guess my basic question is that something you hold the contractor responsible for?
We do. We do have some level of warranty guarantee from their work, for their work. I don't know what that exactly is. Just not out of I just don't know that detail. But of course, there are cases where we've called them back to do something over again because it's apparent that it was a constructability issue. But to give you an idea of sometimes that it's not a constructability issue, we have had on a rare occasion when we milled, then overlaid during the milling process, found out that there might be a small aquifer underneath that seems to be pushing water up through, and the paving went on anyway. And then even though it was new paving, water started coming up through the surface, so we had to go back and do some treatment on that. But that's an example of where it's not it's a condition that exists in the physical part of the earth, if you will, not the contractor necessarily fault. So sometimes it really depends on the situation.
Thank you.
I'll go back and take a look at that with I'll circle back with the gurus about Springer Drive, however. Thank you for the input.
Good.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So Carrie seems to have gotten their microphone issues sorted out. If you wanted to follow up on your chat posts, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation tonight. I appreciate it. I guess I know it can happen now because I know that you've gotten everything approved and everything, but maybe for the future use, and I'll try to access that link that you showed. But what's interesting about the Colonies of Madrillion, which again lies between George Washington and Madrillion Road, it's the only community where people can actually cut through to get to Freedom Hill. So that's very popular because there are a lot of young families in the townhomes along Madrillion Road. So they go through on our street to get to Freedom Hills because there's a playground and a park there. So they cross Madrillion Road and they go through our neighborhood, and then they cross George Washington. And on the back end of Freedom Hill is a gate, and the gate's open all the time. And so a lot of people go across George Washington Road. So my point is, I think it would be good to have a crosswalk on George Washington Road where George Washington meets Madrillion Court.
Okay, again, great. Thank you very much. That's the kind of information we need. We'll take a look at it. It's a separate process, of course, and there has to be curb ramps and things like that. But the first step is to bring it to our attention, which you've done tonight. And I did a snapshot on my phone of your chat so that I have it, and we'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hi, sorry. I'm Carrie's daughter, and I just had a quick question as well. So what is the criteria you guys use when determining what roads are good candidates for crosswalks or bike lanes or anything similar? I understand, of course, that like something as niche as our particular neighborhood might not be on your radar, but I'm just sort of curious what survey techniques you guys use to come up with candidates for roads, or just what the process is for that. Not that I have anything to advocate for, I'm just sort of curious to see how you guys figure this out.
Sure. Well, so crosswalks are really important. I'll just give a little primer here. Crosswalks identify to the pedestrian that us engineers have said that this is a good place for you to cross, a safe place for you to cross. It also identifies for drivers that this is a place where you should expect pedestrians. So when the board created the pedestrian program 20 years ago, I saw the world with all new eyes. I'm like, oh, there ought to be crosswalks everywhere. But that's not really the right answer, because they really do need to be, if they were everywhere, and given our road network, there's a concern that they would lose their importance. So we want them to be important, again, logical crossing places where there's a significant number of crossings. In Virginia, the law is that any intersection of two streets is an unmarked crosswalk. So there's no difference in the law between an unmarked crosswalk and a marked crosswalk, as it's called in Virginia law. But there is certainly that, again, that comfort factor of knowing that you have that striped crosswalk. And again, we're telling pedestrians that's a good place to cross, and drivers to watch out for pedestrians here. We have signs and everything else. Our process is, we're looking at generators. So, for instance, in a traditional single-family neighborhood, there's pedestrians everywhere, right? There's houses, kids. So VDOT doesn't believe that we should be striping crosswalk at every intersection in every neighborhood, because a driver should be expecting pedestrians in residential settings. But when we look at these roads, we look for generators, pedestrian generators, more frequent numbers of pedestrians. So obviously schools are a huge generator, but also lesser generators such as the neighborhood swimming pools, a park, as you guys are mentioning there, or even bus stops. Some of our bus stops have a large number of riders, and so throughout the day, and certainly throughout the AM and PM peaks, there can be a large number of people crossing just to get to a pair of Fairfax Connector or Metro bus stops. So those are the type of things that we look at. But again, we're looking at it from being responsible for the entire county, and so we don't have the local knowledge that you all have about a gate in your opening to a park that would then be the kind of thing that would funnel people to this location to generate pedestrians. So I hope that explains it.
Yeah, that's helpful. Sorry, one other follow-up question is, I guess, what would the line be between what's y'all's jurisdiction versus like an HOA jurisdiction? You see for example, using the example my mom gave, that particular area isn't really a true intersection. It's sort of like the back part of our neighborhood has this opening where, there's this concrete barrier. Cars can't pass through, but obviously pedestrians can. And it opens up onto a street that is just a full, it doesn't have like a turnoff or anything. There's just a gate to the park. And, you know, there's no sidewalk or obvious visual connector that, you know, you can get into the park other than knowing that that's where the gate opens up. So is that something that an HOA should prioritize and, you know, connect with, I guess in this case, the HOA that is in charge of Washington Drive, or would that be something to talk about?
So that's a great question. So as I said earlier, 99.9% of the public streets in Fairfax County are maintained by VDOT, but we do have private streets. So traditional townhouse neighborhoods, your neighborhood, that type of situation, those are private streets. And so private streets are owned and operated and regulated by the HOAs. And so if you have a cut-through problem, you could put up a gate. You could require people to have decals. You could tow people who are parked illegally. You have much stronger ability to regulate your private streets than we do on the public streets. General Washington and Madrillen, the two north-south streets there, those are the VDOT streets. And so those are the public streets that the VDOT maintains. But again, we at the county try and help with problems. So that's the interface. So typically the sidewalk along the public streets and like a foot or two, or you know, where the power poles are, the street lights, that's all public right away. And then again, even in a single family residential neighborhood, anything behind that, the people's front yards, is private property. So in your situation, you could close the gate, for instance. You could lock the gate, say residents only, that kind of stuff. We would have no say in that. But again, since this seems to be a logical place where people are crossing, then we would have to look at that. And then if there's no curb ramps there to build a crosswalk does need to be a defined ADA route, American with Disabilities Act route. So we cannot stripe a crosswalk that does not have curb ramps and does not have infrastructure. So that's the relationship between public and private roadways.
Got you. Thank you for clarifying. Yeah, it's a great, we love seeing the kids going through the neighborhood and everything, but a lot of what you mentioned about safety concerns for pedestrians with low visibility due to car placements is pretty common on that road. And especially since it's a lot of very young, very small children crossing that road, it would be great if there's a way to make it a little bit safer for the youngins. So that way cars can see them and there's not that like scary moment when you see a kid, darting across the street or anything like that. But yes, thank you for this information. It's very helpful.
All right, thanks. So moving on down the list, our next hand up is Yusuf. You have the floor.
Yeah, hey, thank you. Thanks for your time and for the presentation. I sort of encapsulated my question in the chat. I live on Ernestine Street in the Hansborough neighborhood of McLean, off of Old Dominion near the McLean Central Park. And our road, I guess all the roads in the neighborhood, it looks like, looking at the road condition map, they're all red. But but ours, because I see it every day, I feel like ours is overdue for repaving. There's a number of, you can come see it for yourself, but there's potholes, the edges are crumbling, there's extensive cracking, all of that. So, and I guess I've tried to bring that to people's attentions over the last few years. And I've always been told, well, it's not scheduled for this year, it's not scheduled for next year, that kind of thing. But I see now that the street just behind us, Providence Terrace, I think it is, which is a cul-de-sac, and I would think gets significantly less traffic volume than Ernestine Street. And it's probably in the similar condition. that is scheduled for repaving in 2022. So I'm wondering how to, how was that decision made, and what are the plans for Ernestine Street? Thank you.
So this is Steve Welch. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
VDOT?
Yep.
Okay, up on my screen, can you see the pavement condition map?
Yes.
Okay, so you're right. I mean, Providence is one of those that are very poor. I don't know what the actual number rating is for it, whether it's a 0.42 or a 0.37 or what have you. But at the same time, I'm flipping over now to the state map of what we are doing. So you're right. It is showing up as one that's going to be done. There, as I back out, you can see nothing in that immediate area really is being done. So it just so happens that there are so many roads and our budget only goes so far. And sometimes some of the contracts are set up to say do a series of roads in an area, and some of them are do like these 3 or 4 or 5, and during the contracting process, they must have just determined that obviously that they wanted to fit one more in and able to at least do that one. But obviously, we're looking at the map here. Hopefully, some of these have been on the map for a long time. Roads don't get once they're at a certain level in poor condition, or whatever level that is. Others can also be very poor also, and some that are poor can actually become even very poor and very low in that category. And that's because that's why we rate them every year, because some might consistently stay at the same level, where some might get worse just because of the way the road bed was done. Some of the road beds are 70, 80 years old on some roadways, and they deteriorate faster than others. So they become much worse faster than others. But going back to the map itself, it's just a matter of budget. I mean, we're hitting up on Northern Virginia as I scroll through the map and show you areas, and working again, economies of scale, trying to hit on neighborhoods and portions of neighborhoods in Fairfax County where the roads are poor, that are actually very poor, and focusing on those. And you can see that we've done this year, put quite a bit actually on the residential secondary roadways, but unfortunately yours isn't on it. But you can certainly consider it for the future, be added to the list. We know it because it's on the very poor list. But if you have pothole issues and road crumbling on the edge, you can go to the myvdot.virginia.gov website and ask, and we'll have maintenance come out and clean up the potholes, fill them in, clean up the edges, and repave the edges to make it last longer until we can actually become a candidate for a full repaving.
Right. Yeah. I've actually done that in the past, and you guys have been good, within a matter of days coming out for repairs. I sort of just got on my radar, I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, when a teenage girl in our neighborhood hit a pothole on our street, flung over her handlebars and ended up needing to get her jaw wired. And so you guys are, again, like, I guess VDOT is, or their contractors are great about coming out when stuff is reported or when they notice something. But I mean, it's just a patchwork now. And honestly, considering the assessed property values in the area, it's kind of atrocious that the roads are in this condition.
Well,
I mean, I understand their budgetary concerns, and I understand you guys are doing a great job in neighborhoods that, I don't drive on, but this is where I live. And I brought it to multiple people's attention. I brought it to Supervisor Faust's attention. I was actually on a panel there was a task force that Supervisor Faust put together a few years ago for a turning lane at Balls Hill and Georgetown Pike, and add, to deal with the turn signal backup onto the Beltway. I was actually on that task force, and I raised that with some of the VDOT representatives there, and they were sort of like, okay, we'll look into it. But nothing's been done and nothing's been scheduled, and then to see that a street right next door that's in similar condition but with much less use, that's serving a lot fewer houses, is getting paved this year. It's frustrating.
I understand. It's budgetary. It literally is it's a budgetary issue. As you look on the map here and compare, you can see all the red. Red is typically residential streets, but also some of the others. But red is very poor. We have a lot of them. We're still playing catch up after, I think I showed you on the budget map that we have $107 million for this season. During the late 2000s and into the early 2010s, that budget literally went down to roughly 40 to 50 million. And for 3 or 4 years, if I recall, during that recession period, if you will. So we got, unfortunately, behind, and we're still playing catch up. And typically a roads that repaved is going to last 20, 25 years. But we have some out there that have been paved in 25 years still. And you can see on the map, I appreciate your concerns, and we'll certainly do what we can to address the potholes and what have you, and continue to do that. And hopefully your neighborhood, the rest of it will fall into the sequence in the future years contracts. So sharing your concerns, we have it everywhere. It's a very hard decision, but they do use some science and looking at which roadways in terms of the ranking, even within the very poor. I think I showed the map earlier. I'll go back to it here. In the condition rating map that I'm showing, you can have very poor in 50 and below down to 35. So it could be that, the road next to you was a 36 where yours is a 47. And that's the pure reason why they went with that roadway. So we do take it to an engineering science level. So.
Of course. Is there a way for me to find out when my street was last reviewed and what the pavement rating is?
Yeah, you can go on to the My VDOT portal that talked about here. So my.vdot.virginia.gov, and that will direct that type of question to the right people who will look that information up and respond back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure if it's, I mean, no doubt there are probably worse roads out there, but there's certainly better roads out there that seem to be getting paved. So I just want to make sure we're on the radar.
Yeah, and certainly are. But meanwhile, we'll continue to, hit us up for any potholes or road edges that you're having. Let them know about that too.
Will do. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Excuse me. So we do have a little bit more time left. It looks like 266 has got their hand back up. Hopefully your microphone issues are solved. So the floor is yours.
I guess that's me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I had my mute on my phone. Sorry. On Madrilyn and Boss, I'm very happy to hear that you're putting across. We also need a no U-turn. Many of the DMV customers tend to turn on Madrilyn Road, and when they see that they cannot go into the parking lot of the DMV, they come and they do a U-turn right there. And as you see there, we have a lot of pedestrians, a lot of children And it would, I don't know if it would be possible to put a sign of no U-turn. Having said that, while you had your contractors working on Gallows Road, the big trucks, they would always come here and do a U-turn at 3 a.m., during the day, all day long. They were always turning here and at a very high speed. I called, and I don't know how many people I tried telling them about this problem, and no one. They told me, oh, that's on the contractor. So it was very dangerous. I don't know if you're done with your Gallows Road repavement or whatever that project is, but if not, please, the big trucks should not be coming into this neighborhood, and especially to come and do a U-turn.
Yeah, hi. This is Steve Welch. Sorry, I didn't catch your name, but what's the name of the roadway again that you're?
That's Madrillen and Boss Street, where you're putting the crossway.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we talked about the crosswalk earlier. Chris did that we're working out together, but I'd have to look at the situation with the U-turns and are they U-turning in the T of the intersection?
Yes.
They are?
Yes.
Okay.
Daily. We have a lot of cars, and as I said, all the trucks for a whole year and a half working on Gallows Road, they would come at high speed turning there.
Okay. Well, certainly one of the first things I would do is contact the non-emergency Fairfax County Police, because that's
I did that. I called everyone. I called the police. I called everyone. I said, you know what? Let's hope that there's, they don't hit a child once.
Yeah.
And by the way, talking about Carrie's observation on that crossway to the school, like 6 years ago, a deer was hit there. I had to call the Fairfax Animal Rescue. So thankfully it was a deer and not a child. But I do agree that cars, that's a straight, and sometimes cars go pretty fast. And some children are very, very little and they go on their bikes. And some parents, I don't know, they have like 2, 3 kids and they don't, they can't take care of both kids. So it would be good to put some kind of a white lane there or whatever to make the drivers aware that, because they don't know there's a gate going into the school. So it is kind of Fairfax County property there.
We're talking about two different things then, because you were talking about making U-turns, and on the map here, I've got Gallows Road where it intersects with Madrillen. And you say trucks from I'm guessing it's from one of either the repaving project or possibly, I'm not sure, I wouldn't think it would be I-66, but trucks
No, it was from Gallows Road. Gallows Road, I don't know what you guys were doing there for a whole year and a half. They're still milling down there.
Down here? Down
Gallows Road?
Yeah.
All Gallows Road was broken, open like 2, 3 times.
Yeah, I think there's also, it could be a utility company doing underground utility work. I'm not really sure. But if they're making that kind of movement in this intersection, I mean, that's an illegal move. And I mean, we're not the enforcement agency, unfortunately, but I'd just ask you to definitely try to call Fairfax County Police non-emergency and explain that situation. That's the best I can tell you for that. The other one, I have to defer to Chris. I'm not really, the location wise, I'm not sure where you were referring to, even though I have the map up here.
Yeah, I think she's probably referring to Boss Street. They're going, is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, Madrillen and Boss Street, yes.
Right here? Okay.
Because of the DMV, they're they're going past the DMV and realizing they can't get in and turning around.
Oh, I see. There's no entrance back here to the DMV on Madrillan. Okay, there's two entrances up on the two main entrances out on Gallows, but they're going down Madrillan, and then okay, yeah. I don't know. I mean, they got two entrances off the road. Are people, if they're doing that continuously, making U-turns and going back out, and you're seeing them go into the DMV?
Well, some of them, yes.
Yeah. I don't. I mean, I guess from our. I mean, I'm not sure how to respond to that, but if you could write your question into the MyVDOT portal that we talked about earlier, that will at least get something written, documented that helps us understand it better, and we can look into it.
Okay.
Perhaps some signage is necessary that would help, and we can talk to the DMV themselves. They are another state agency about helping with the signage of where to enter and exit the DMV itself. So.
Right. Maybe
Okay.
on Gallows a signage could be placed. Yep. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Joseph, were you gonna chime in on that topic?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. I just wanted to let the caller know, having heard the discussion relative to the U-turn issue off of Gallows at the DMV, the Providence office will also get in contact with the McLean District Station relative to enforcement there, and do whatever we can to support VDOT and DMV signage. Thanks.
Thank you, Joseph.
Great. So I think that's all our hands and kind of right on time. It's a little after 8:30, so we'll wrap it up for the evening. Just as a reminder, I put in the chat the link to our repaving and restriping program info on the Fairfax County DOT website. If you can't memorize that URL, no worries, just Google search Fairfax County paving and restriping, and that'll get you there. That may or may not have been what I did to go get that URL. So thanks everyone for coming out. We also have 3 more meetings this week for the rest of the county. The next one will be tomorrow at 7 p.m. They'll all be on Teams. Yeah, thanks again for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you. I should have said at the beginning, thank you for your participation. Again, we can't do any of this without community involvement. So thank you all very much for taking your time tonight to join with us in this meeting. So thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Good night.
Good night. Take care.